Oh, yeah. Sorry. Are there any public comments for closed session items only?
Nothing on you.
Okay, and nothing in the room. So we'll move on to roll call.
Trustee Jackson Miller. Here. Trustee Donnelly.
Present.
Trustee Gray.
Here.
Trustee Edmondson.
Present.
And trustee Dickinson has not yet arrived.
All right. The board will convene to close session. All right, welcome, everybody. I'd like to call open session to order. Let's start with the pledge of allegiance. Please rise. Place your hand on your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and I will offer that I've had chickens before, but they got eaten by coyotes.
No.
Tell us about the pledge leader.
Yeah.
I did, I had chickens. Should we go around? Yes, all right. May I have an adoption of the agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, agenda is adopted. Report out of closed session. For item 2A, inter-district transfer case 2025-2601, the board upheld the district's decision. May I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Don't we have more to report out on for closed session?
What?
Don't we have more that we report out on for closed?
I
session?
didn't. Oh,
Yeah.
we do have more.
And then I'm sorry, another point
Oh,
of
I'm-
clarification, that's okay, on the denial of the appeal, do we need to report out the vote?
I don't think we need the specific vote, do we? Maybe we do. It can't hurt. to
Maybe
do it. I'm sorry, I don't
By
remember.
routing, you have to have
Yeah.
who voted by.
My apologies.
Yeah.
She asked and I gave the wrong answer.
Oh, okay. All right, so we're backtracking. All right. Backtrack, okay.
Fired up there.
I know. All right, the report out of closed session. For item 2A, case 2025-2601, the board upheld the district's decision on a vote of 5-0. The other item, 2C, that the board is reporting out on. The board has determined that the superintendent's evaluation for 24-25 school year is positive, and he is entitled to a COLA increase in the same amount, if any, granted to the district's non-management certificated employees. Yeah. Thanks for that. Sorry, I'm moving way too fast. All right, on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt this consent agenda.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
And we have some resolutions soon.
All right.
Trustee Edmondson,
Aye.
trustee Gray,
Aye.
trustee Donnelly,
Aye.
trustee Jackson Miller.
Aye.
Trustee Dickinson.
Aye.
All right, consent. You don't have to do it for all of them, right?
Just one time.
In
for all
total.
consent. Yep.
Okay. All right, consent agenda passes. Moving on to public hearings. I'd like to, oh, do I open it? No, you open it. I'll pass the buck.
Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing on the local control accountability plan and the local budget overview for parents to allow for community input and listening.
All right, nothing in the room. All
Nothing on email.
right.
You can close when you have.
All right, so the board would like to close the public hearing for the local control and accountability plan. Moving on to the public hearing for 5B.
I would like to open the public hearing regarding the proposed budget for 25-26 for SoCal Union Elementary School District.
All right, nothing in the room.
Nothing on email.
None email. The board would like to close the public hearing regarding the 25-26 budget. Next, public hearing for 5C.
I would like to open the public hearing for the California School Employees Association, CSEA tentative agreement.
Nothing in the room. Anything on email?
Nothing on email.
All right, the board would like to close the public hearing for CSEA's tentative agreement. Moving on to public communications. Nothing in the room.
Nothing on email.
All right, moving on to standing reports. Superintendent, would you like to start us off?
I think I'm gonna pass tonight, given the robust agenda. Thank you.
Right?
I'm gonna pass with the exception of one item, and that is that Carlo Albano, principal of Santa Cruz Gardens, was just awarded the administrator of the year for the excellence in environmental education.
Nice.
And I just have a real quick one, but I think it's really important. I would like to give a shout out to Amanda Tamar, our CNS director, for receiving a perfect review. They said that and throughout our whole county, she is the only one that's had a perfect review. When they go in, they check everything from protocols through accounting and through all food handling and all and everything in that realm. And she had, everything was great. Everything was perfect. Even when the secondary auditor came through, when they asked the secondary questions, they're like, we don't see any issues at all here. So
Wow.
kudos to Amanda.
Awesome.
That's exciting.
Yeah. All right, 7B, any items from CSEA?
I don't have anything.
Any items from SEA?
I don't have anything.
All right, moving on to 7D, items from trustees.
Nothing for me. Nothing for me.
Say I really enjoyed New Brighton's graduation. I think that happened after our last
Yeah.
meeting,
Yeah.
and thank you, Kelly, for the speech. on
Yeah,
the
thank
board.
you.
That was a really
Yeah.
lovely speech, and
Thank you.
and kudos to the administration for putting on such a nice graduation.
Yeah, that was a really lovely graduation. Yeah. All right, moving on to presentation, information and discussion items. 8A, presentation regarding the 25-26 local control accountability plan.
Thank you. I bring the LCAP itself and the local budget overview for parents, as well as the slide deck. So LBOP and LCAP are on page 303, but I will start with the presentation, and that is on page 425. So
Thank you for that.
Let me get there too.
Does it fly on you, fly by?
Okay. Looks like it's not going very.
Just gotta deal with a skip 2 page number. I just don't know what I'm doing on this.
My numbers are.
What number?
Media.
It was like two
425,
pages past,
did you say?
425. It was like 428 for me.
Yeah, 428 on ours. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry about
For a
that.
while.
Still getting there.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, we were scrolling.
Clicker's okay.
Clicker. On. Okay, yes. All right, but I'm still getting there. Wait a second. My computer is a little slow. Okay, I apologize for that delay. Right, so here we are with the local control accountability plan. This is a plan that we submit every year during this time, and it is submitted in the month of June in this district. Some districts it's presented in May, but it has to be completed and approved by the board by the end of June, and it has to be held over 2 meetings, the first reading and a second reading for approval.
Is it the angle? Would it help if we did it?
Maybe. Okay,
John, be a clicker.
will you?
Yes.
I'll be your clicker too. So the two areas that we're gonna be talking tonight is one, we're gonna be talking about just the overview of what happened last year, the 24-25 school year. And last year, just to remind the board, it was the first year of a 3-year plan. And so we're now finishing year 1, and then we are going to do a little bit of an overview for 25-26, what we've changed and what we've kept more of the same of in the year coming up. Next slide. So there are required LCAP processes. One is you have to do some comprehensive strategic planning, and that's the development of a plan, taking in all of the information from your educational partners and looking at all the data and resources that you have available to come up with a comprehensive strategic plan. The next piece of it is the meaningful partner engagement. So not only are you taking in information from your educational partners, but you're doing it in multiple ways. So we will talk about some of the ways that we do that. And the board knows a lot of them because we actually talk to you about the LCAP every time we meet. So just it's an ongoing practice. And then the last piece is the accountability and compliance. It is required by the state of California to complete these reports, not just from a fiscal standpoint, but for, you know, the public's meaningful participation and understanding about what their kids are getting access to.
A quick question.
Yes,
So this is a 3-year plan. What was the first year of this year?
this time last year, the board approved the first of the 3-year plans. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So the next slide is just an overview of the goals. So there's 4 goals in our plan. When I talk to the board at every board meeting about some of our actions, they always fall under one of these 4 LCAP goals. So this is just a reminder what they are, even though we talk about them often. Okay, so the next one, this is just to remind the board how LCFF funding is related to student groups. The LCAP and LCFF funding is not really designed for all kids. We have money that comes into the district that is not LCAP funds. The LCAP funds are just a small slice, and they really are targeted at students who fall into the categories that are at like below this little dashboard sign on the slide. So socioeconomically disadvantaged students, English learners, and foster youth are the students that we target as we're planning for educational benefit through the LCAP process. So it used to be an understanding that the LCAP was all the money that we spend on services. It is really meant to focus on these groups of students. If it can focus on groups more than these students, we do that. And there are some of the funds that you'll see that do benefit all students, like counseling as an example. On the right-hand side, you'll see just kind of what our demographics look like. And the board has seen these demographics in the mid-year update. We do an annual LCAP update in June, but we do a mid-year update in January, and that's after the dashboard results are out.
Straight, are we allowed to ask questions during this, or is that, you want us to prefer we wait to the end, or does you have?
You can do whatever suits.
I just had a quick question, what's the level for socioeconomically disadvantaged?
In our district, it's
Yes.
just over 35%.
No, I mean, how is it determined somebody is socioeconomically is it a certain, what's the income level, I guess? And that's how we determine it?
It's actually done through business services, and I don't know the exact cutoff.
It's a factor, so it depends on if they qualify for services, like outside of the district. It could be any of the programs like Medi-Cal or anything like that, or any type of services where they receive funding and so forth. They automatically qualify. And I believe, gosh, don't quote me on the amount because it changes slightly. I want to say it's around, because it goes single and then it goes 2% household and so forth. It may start around, I don't know why 45,000 is in my head. And then it kind of goes up from there. So depending on where, but don't quote me, I'll double check those numbers and I can.
It just seems like really, not that, I mean, I get it, it's a really high number.
Very-
35% of our student body is socioeconomically disadvantaged.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's not, as from what I know from outside of here, I think this is true for school districts as well. That's not tied into like a local factor, right? Like the term socioeconomically disadvantaged for state use doesn't, right? So not only is it 35%, but like
Cost of living isn't.
the
Yeah.
cost of living isn't factored in. So
Yeah.
someone living in the middle of the state in the less expensive area, like,
Is the same socioeconomic
Yeah,
so,
benchmark?
Yeah.
so, 35.3%.
might also be that really like 50 or 60% of families are really struggling financially, they just don't get this particular.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah, to just.
exactly right.
And then also then we do there's also some families that don't want to fill out the forms and so forth, so then
Yeah.
they,
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
So, yeah, so
Good
that's when we try to, make sure everyone fills out the forms, this is a big part of it.
And is it 40% that we'd receive more funding?
It goes really up to, I believe it's about 55%, it's a little bit higher than that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
About 55%,
55
and then,
to get
yeah.
to that number where you get the,
because then you have the supplemental and concentration,
Right.
right now we just receive supplement, so, yes.
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
sorry, thanks. Jim.
No, that's great. So the next section just really talks about the engagement of educational partners. So there's families and caregivers, and those are the people that we meet at ELAC meetings, DLAC meetings, school site councils, through the community voice gatherings, all of those surveys that we send out, all of the ways that we reach our families every day as a district, but also in schools, because the school site teams also send out surveys to parents to find out what their interests are. We also do with our certificated and classified staff, we do surveys, but we also, Scott and Allison and I go out and visit every school site and we talk to them about anything that they want to talk about the LCAP. Sometimes it's not even about the LCAP, but we go out there for an afternoon and we just say, tell us everything you want us to know. So, because we know that the survey we give only asks 3 questions, and that's for consistency purposes to find out how we're doing over time. But we also want a blank slate for people to be able to talk to us about anything. And they do. They talk to us about lots of things. We also meet with our administrative staffs in multiple forums. And we meet with you every time we meet, we talk about the LCAP. We survey students, and there's some student data in here. We have English learner parent councils at the school sites, but also at the district level. And we get a lot of really great input from those families. And then we also have our community, our COE partners at the County Office of Education. So lots of different ways that we collect information from folks. And it's not limited to just those. We have outside partners that include like CKC and the City of Capitola and all of those people as well. Slide. So we did collect some educational partner data from families, and we have posted them here. I will say that all of these are on a positive trend from last year. Last year we put the neutral in with the positive or the affirming numbers. In looking at all of these, you're looking at a bump or an increase over feeling welcome, effective levels of communication, sharing my thoughts and opinions, my child's strengths and talents. And that was actually at the biggest jump. So from last year to this year, families feeling like we know what their students' strengths and talents are have really grown. That's something to be really proud of. My student has meaningful access to standards-based materials, and this was also a big jump from last year. There was a bigger group that did not know last year than knew this year. So I think we're doing a better job at communicating that. And then my child receives high quality and needs responsive instruction. And that's also at 92% when you do that combined number, which is very high, probably one of the highest I've seen. So those are really strong numbers for us to get from our families. We did some staff surveys as well. And we asked them kind of about the things that they liked or they want more of in the LCAP. And we based it off of what the first year of the LCAP had in it. So the first year they said, well, we want expanded learning time. We want supplemental math materials. We want multi-tiered systems of support. We want parent participation. Well, guess what? Those are the same 4 that rose to the top this year when we surveyed them. So it was an interesting thing to see because they're not ranked by any weight. And everybody every year kind of goes into this not knowing what their partner is going to say or someone else is going to say, but consistently year to year, these 4 have been at the top. This was also interesting. The grade level planning time was something that they thought was really beneficial to their instructional practice. And so what they want more of in terms of development was grade level planning time, which we built into their Friday schedule, classroom differentiation strategies, subject matter planning, coaching and mentoring, collaboration data cycles, and a systematic cost. And again, the same, we're at the top. The first year we wrote the LCAP and the second. So we know we're on track because they're seeking more of what they wanted and we're providing. So that's really great to see as well. And then the last one is really just that safe and equitable school environment question. What do you think that we need to focus on in the LCAP in the continuing year? Again, counseling came up at the top. Family education came up at the top this year and last year. Family connection strategies came up a little bit higher this year, and inclusive clubs and activities came up a little bit this year. So we're excited to be able to see that our staff is really finding value in the things that we're putting forth in the LCAP. All right, we asked students questions too. We surveyed students in grades 3 through 8. I don't know if the board remembers a couple of years ago, we tried second graders. It was fun, but the results were funny. So we decided to focus on 3rd through 8th graders. We asked students how they classified themselves. And so it's interesting to see how students classify themselves. We gave them like 50 different things that they could choose. And these are the ones that kind of came up the most, but in different areas. It was interesting. 30% said that they would prefer not to say. Because, you know, there's a lot of reasons they might think I'm more than one of these things, right? So just an interesting option. What do you like most about school remains high at the top, socializing and friends. I don't think that's changed since I've been here. Except I think maybe during COVID. Recess and lunch, very high. Amanda does a really good job, I think, making the numbers stay high. Physical education and teacher remains very high. Something that crept up on the list this year was reading, which was nice to see. And I think that has been influenced by more of our kids reading better. They're getting a lot more early reading foundational skills. And another one that crept up this year was creating at 47%. That made my heart really joyful. And that's not something that was rated high as high.
Do we think they're talking about like the maker space?
I think that they're talking about project-based learning. I think
Yeah.
they're talking about maker spaces.
Awesome.
Yeah, learning new things was like right up there with that. So I feel like student maybe agency is built into that, which I am loving. So great to hear. Where we asked students how they mostly feel. Tired was number 1, but it was a lower number than last year. So while they're still tired, they're less tired. Or a few of them are less tired. Happy was among the top. Smart was among the top. Those are things I'd love to see when kids feel those feelings. Bored 44%, not something that we like to see. We want that number to go way down. Silly crept up this year. And maybe that's because they're having fun, and that would be okay too. Excited, respected, understood, and capable are all still very high. So we feel good about that. Sad, lonely, and worried. Those are the kiddos that we really want to find. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it was really nice to see them self-reporting so well. I think our kids do a really good job of identifying with their feelings because we do so much work with the mood meter and the ruler tools that they're able to articulate it through just like a very grown-up survey. Okay, so the next slide is very hard to read, and I'm not going to read it to you. But really what the LCAP asks us to think about deeply is, were the actions that we planned effective or not? And so the way that the LCAP used to work is you could say like, yes, they were, but that's not the way it works anymore. You actually have to say it was and how it was. And so we go through every single action and we say, this was effective. This is how we know it was effective, or this is how we're going to build from it. So in all of the actions under goal 1, we studied kind of like how did the students do? How did our staff respond to us, or other educational partners respond to us? Do we want to keep doing it or not? And that's how we get to the effective or ineffective, kind of qualification. Some things just to know, and the board knows about these, is the administration of, the iReady diagnostic. has been super successful, but we will be changing the timeline on that for the middle school. Coming into the year ahead, they've asked to add one more diagnostic session so that they'll have 3, so that they'll have more information about how to serve the students mid-year. Not just at the beginning and the end of the year. So we're seeing some just minor adjustments with those kinds of things. The supplemental instructional materials and literacy, we've built such great programming for the TK through 2nd grade. 3 through 5 is now where we're focusing, and the new units of study are what we're purchasing for the upper grades, because they have a really strong vocabulary and word work section. And comprehension as well. So really building onto that literacy piece. And then just really continuing with looking at the increased periods at the middle school so that students have more access to courses, in particular elective courses, and then providing quality mentorship to teachers. Release time for equitable classroom instructional practices. We're going to continue to do those. Looking at high leverage skills. Most of it will be in the realm of the new framework of mathematics. But very, very strong commitment to the additional materials for supplemental math as well. Transitional kindergarten, and then of course, really continuing our Prop 28 support of our VAPA teachers and our science teacher at the gardens. In goal 2, the EL specialists are a really, really successful addition that we will continue. Grade level collaboration, the teachers have asked for. I don't know if the board knows, but they were meeting about once a month for grade levels across the district so they could share best practice and share resources. They've asked for that again, we'll continue it. Our personnel costs in terms of our actions about intervention remain the same. And we're seeing that them function more in the data cycle discussions than we ever have before. So what we're doing in our site-based teams is we're having data dive discussions about all of our students and where their strengths are and what they need to know next. And our intervention and ELD teachers are a part of those discussions as well. That's really, really something to, I think, feel successful with and continue with. Professional development, instructional materials. Well, we've just gotten new social studies materials. So we're going to be doing some training to those. And in fact, those pallets are coming tomorrow. We're really excited. Wow. Yeah, we're very excited. Well, I'm not excited about the pallets. I'm really excited about some books. And then we'll continue our professional development with our writing and literacy trainers, Momentum and Lizzie, and then working with our PE coach with our math leadership team. So professional development for dual language immersion will continue as we're adding another grade level this coming year. And we're really excited to have a new teacher for our 3rd grade DLI teacher. So I know I'm talking really fast because there's so many things. Continuing with the Universe 360 behavior screener is going to be really critical, especially when we look at the children that say they're sad or they're lonely. And we do notice that in the data that we have on this group of these sites tonight, that the at-risk data is actually increasing. And that's not something, we don't want that number to increase, we want it to decrease. We want to really focus on instructional materials for interventions, and we did bring in some newcomer materials. It's very hard to find newcomer materials in our ELD specialists and intervention teachers found a product called Hello, and that's specifically for newcomers that we purchased and we're going to be rolling out next year. We have professional development and conferences that we're going to continue on with next year. Vertical articulation and classroom observations. The ELOP program was something that came up as a really highly rated one from our staff, as something that was super successful for kids, and just continuing on with that. And the materials that go with that, and then increased access to the CTE. And that is in every way that we can, building out those maker spaces, building out, those options for kids, working with your future as our business to think about lots of different kinds of jobs, not just the ones that your mom and dad have. And then in goal 3, there are fewer actions. There are just a few. One that we put a particular level of interest in is our equitable access to outdoor education, and this is targeted for our 5th grade students. We want all of them to have the experience, and we want all of them to be able to go. And we know that when almost 36% of our students are socioeconomically disadvantaged, sometimes that's a factor. And then campus supervision and counseling, of course, all fall under that that effectiveness of school safety and connectedness. And then goal 4, just the parent education series. We were trying to build it out separately, and we ended up building it into ELAC meetings and DLAC meetings, but we are going to actually do both next year. So we're going to effectively kind of influence a lot of what happens in those LCAP meetings or those ELAC meetings, because that's what parents ask for by site. But also we want to take all of our schools and kind of harness the effort and have like combined family education nights with our EL parents. And then our community liaison, Lily, has been super successful, as has been Cradle to Career. So we're going to continue with those into the coming year. Okay, so I know that was a marathon, but here we're going to get to some good stuff. The next slide just goes into some iReady reading data. And so this is growth from this time last year to this time now, this time this year. And we see a growth in reading, which is great to see. But what's even better to see is where we've had targeted instruction for our low SES, our students with disabilities, and our ELs. We saw greater growth. So we saw over 5% in each of those groups. Really, really great to see that when you're paying attention to something deeply, it's working. And then the next slide is our iReady math. Again, the growth was 3%, but for ELs and students with disability, the growth was 5% or more. And so that's something that we also want to see grow for all kids, but definitely nice to be able to see areas of growth. This is a slide that I really appreciate, and that's because I put in green all the areas where there was growth. And so you can see that there in almost every subsection or subgroup of students, we saw growth in English language arts and in math this year. So that's something to be very proud of. I was talking to Christina over at New Brighton earlier today, and she had a group of their students who had grown by 15% in math. And so it was really kind of trying to figure out, like, how does that happen? What's happening? So really looking at, growth overall, but students by group, because we still have gaps, right? We have to keep growing these numbers. Okay, our reading benchmark data. This is what we really wanted to take a look at, because we've been looking at our reading foundations so closely. And so we've gone up in all grades in our reading benchmark data. So that's nice to see too. Interestingly, the biggest jump is in kindergarten. And so I think that's because there's a high level of fidelity of use in the foundational phonics supplements that we've provided. And so I'd like to see that, because if they're reading and they have those foundational skills in kindergarten, that's going to move right up to 1st grade and then 2nd grade. And you're going to see some strong trends there.
Jessica?
Yeah.
Sorry, so it just,
Oh, you wanna go back?
can you go back one slide?
Sorry.
So I just noticed, like, from 3rd, I mean, it's great growth, kindergarten to 1st to 2nd to 3rd, it's 71, and then it drops down to 4th grade to 54%. I mean, it's a 17% drop. Is there a reason, do you think?
Yeah, that 3rd grade group is the 1st grade we tried the foundational literacy program.
Oh, okay.
But say that again.
So the 3rd grade group at the kind of
The U flat.
yeah, that's when we started
Oh.
Haggerty and U-Flag.
Wow.
So I think
Wow.
that's why you can see such market.
And it doesn't kind of remediate the 4th and 5th graders?
It doesn't
Or
go to those grades.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's the tricky. That's why we've built into this coming year the units of study purchases for reading comprehension, work and vocabulary, because that's where the weaknesses are in this grade.
But that's not the U flag, right?
No, they don't, U-Fly only goes up to second grade.
Do those students need that kind of remediation?
Some of them do, and we have actually interestingly, at two of our schools, the SDC teachers are using the U-Fly with the older kids. And so they're using it effectively because that's where their students were, and we weren't thinking about using it with other kids. Because, you know, it wasn't part of like the intervention or ELD program. Now those teachers are using it also, and so they're all being trained. They've all been trained. And then I think what we'll also find is when we give the multitudes reading screener this year, this coming year is going to be the first year that we're screening all kids in kindergarten through second grade. I think we're going to be able to see like where some of, like, if we have some holes where they are and what students will need them. We're also going to find out if we can assess students after second grade. So like if we think students are having reading difficulties that are not in those grades that were their mandatory, can we use them in the students in other grades? So just trying to get as much data as we can on how the students do. Get a lot of data through iReady. I think the one thing that I would say about iReady is we're using the personalized lessons more for math than for reading, but they can be used for reading. So if I'm in third, fourth, or fifth grade and I'm reading at a second grade level, I can do those skill-based lessons in reading to improve my reading skills and my phonics skills. But we've been focusing more on math. So just some areas to look at.
Are the fourth, fifth graders getting that reading screener?
No, it's only
They're not.
required up until second grade.
Do we have access to be able to give some of those students?
That's our question.
That's okay.
Because UCSF has been our partner. They're offering us a free product. They've been great partners. They're going to be uploading all of our students over the course of this summer once we turn over IEC and do all that kind of stuff. And because it's free, we're hoping that they'll allow us extra licensing. Can't hurt them, right? We're not paying them anyway. We just don't know if they'll allow us to.
Is that the supplement for fourth and fifth grade
We are
equivalent of what we're doing in second?
We've ordered a supplement that is equivalent to what we're doing in K through 2. It's actually 3 through 5 that we've ordered it. The multitudes is the reading difficulty screener that is now required by law in the state of California to give to all K through 2 students. But we don't know if we can give it to any other students. We did a couple of test students last week with the ELD and intervention teachers. It was, first of all, amazing. It was the best day I've had in teaching and learning in a long time because we took some students who had difficulty in reading and have made a lot of growth, and watching them kind of navigate it with a teacher. And it was super predictable. I mean, it was like really, really good information. So I think we're going to get a lot from it. I don't know if it'll help us in third, fourth, or fifth grade if we're not allowed to use it in these grades, but just something to consider for us.
And then would the U-Fly help those fourth and fifth graders?
I think it could potentially. I would say there are some students who are still reading at like the second grade level in fourth or fifth grade. For those students, it would. For those students who are reading at third grade, at fifth grade, it's not going to because it only goes through second grades. So it just depends on who the student is. Does that make sense? Nathan?
Yeah, it's a bit of a bind.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's so good, right? And we want more of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't have reading intervention.
We do.
We do.
Yeah.
Pull out groups, is that
We
what
have
we do?
pull out and push in
Oh, okay.
in all grades.
Is there something that exists between fifth and sixth and that vertical integration between elementary and middle school?
You mean in terms of like how the sixth grade teachers would know about who's coming in and like what their levels are? Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Exactly, or is there and I know we don't have a summer program or something like that, but you know, a way to keep those fifth graders at grade level or continue to move them for the sixth grade so they don't start out on it.
Yeah, that's who we invited to summer school.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's, I mean, basically the middle school teacher who teaches ELD and intervention for summer school is there with her middle school students, and the fifth graders are there also. We saw Erica today. And so we're really thinking about how to vertically articulate what the kids are gonna need when they go to the next.
And there's not a remediation group or reading group at New Brighton, right? So some of these kids kind of come in with a deficit, but they're just kind of in the normal sixth grade English.
Well, yes and no. So the way that they're building the co-teaching model is to put some of those kids into the co-teaching model class. So you've gotten the two teacher kind of push in support. And next year it'll be sixth grade and seventh grade that they'll have that co-teaching model in English language arts and with math. Interestingly, where we saw some big jumps were with the co-teaching model. So that's something that I'll let Christina share with you when she gives her data, but really interesting data. Are we ready?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So the California Healthy Kids Survey data, feeling connected to school, caring adults at school, and feeling safe at school. And we always see a little bit of a lower number in the seventh grade years, and I think that's expected. Because they don't have a single teacher that's kind of holding on to them all day. But the numbers are still good, not good enough. And so just something really interesting to see. The feeling connected to school was an increase over the California Healthy Kids Survey last time. And feeling safe at school was an increase, but having a caring adult dropped by just a tiny little bit. I think it's like 2%. Universe 360 risk screener data.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So 31% of our seventh graders don't feel safe at school. Did they give a reason for that? Is that how, I mean, that's like, and I understand it might not be that bad, but it seems like a lot of kids, 30% don't feel safe at school.
Yeah, and we don't know what that means, right? We don't know if a student feels like physically
Right.
like unsafe, or if they feel like emotionally unsafe. Like we can't qualify it. So it's us having to say, well, if there's a third of them, we have to do something that's more of a tier 1 strategy. Like, how do we bring belongingness into the activities that we plan for our school so that we can hit more of the students?
We'd able to ask them, why don't you feel safe at school?
We can ask them anything, whether they want to tell us certain or not is another story. I would say most of the students that we find who would be in this category have a connection to a school counselor already, because there's other things that are giving us indications that they're not feeling like they fit in or they feel safe. But there's lots of ways to do it better. Yes.
I would just add that while the chicks is an anonymous data point, we have other tools that I'm just gonna go into that provide a little more in-depth probing of individual students.
So this data is just, it has to do with the students who are at the highest level of risk and this is a social and behavioral screener. And this one is one that Chris and her team look at really carefully with the counselors, with the school psychologists, with all of the members of her team. And we see that there is creeping up plus by a small amount of students who are at higher risk at each school. New Brighton stayed the same, which is, I don't know if that's good or bad, but we do see a bigger jump at the Soquel Elementary site. So something that we look at really carefully. And then the next slide is the California Dashboard Local Indicator. That's also on the agenda tonight. And they've asked all schools to put it into their LCAT, even though they're different reports, they talk about different things, but which is part of what's required. And so the California Dashboard Local Indicator data is data that we provide, and we provide a report to, and you'll see a copy of that in the document. And it asks about teaching materials, it talks about academic standards, it talks about family engagement, climate, and access to broad course of study, and we meet all the criteria.
Jessica?
Yeah.
Can I just ask,
Sorry.
on the last slide, sorry,
Yeah.
it says 11% of our classified teachers or 11% of our teachers were classified as ineffective.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Ineffective means that they're teaching a course out of their out of their credentialing path. So as an example, we lost a math teacher last year. We had a PE teacher, two science teachers, and another math teacher take over the sections for that teacher. So those would all be classified as ineffective teachers. The interesting thing is that all of those kids' math scores went up higher than in the other grades. So they can be ineffective by definition, but effective in the classroom. Does that make sense?
And you have,
Terrible
yeah, you have to
Yeah,
use
it's a
that word.
terrible word to
Yeah,
use,
yeah, that's, yeah,
You have to put in there in effect, yeah.
nice change.
Yeah. And they started this, what last year, and I still,
remember that.
they still haven't asked me if I think it's okay. The next slide is our attendance rate. Our attendance rate is up, yay. Suspension rate is down, yay. Chronic absenteeism down, yay.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Just some year-end analysis. It's always great to see that our county and state, no, I was gonna say do worse than us. That's not great. We do better than they do. In all areas, in science, reading, and math. There was strong alignments to the goals and actions with the budget this year. I think this is the strongest alignment I've ever seen in an LCAP. And I think that's really because they actually ask us to report out specifically how effective things are, how much money we're spending, how much money we're not spending. And we really, it's, even though I don't like the length of the LCAP, I do like that they ask us to ask those questions because it really helps us, really helps focus us. Overall reading and math scores went up, and then especially for some of our subgroups. And then just kind of looking at that gap still persists, right? And so it's like we still got to close it. We still got to close those gaps for English learners, even though they're creeping up more than if it's a general. We still have room to grow. Attendance looks great. Chronic absenteeism looks great. Suspension rates look great. The increase of number of students that feel or are identified at high risk is troublesome. So really, those are some things to look at. Some new areas of focus. And I do know there was a board member who asked, like, what are we going to do about these things? Well, I just so happen to have something for you. And if any board member, or not any board member, any member of the public wants to see them, you certainly can. But we have a strategic plan for every one of the areas.
Cool.
So if you want to take those. So when we take a look at making shifts, it's not just like, oh, well, we need to shift that. How are we going to do that? So this is a little bit of a bigger explanation of what that would look like. We could keep the extras, Robert.
I don't pass the.
And really, it's always at this time of year in planning for the next year, it's always, kind of really thinking about strategy as you're like thinking about your professional development plan, how you're bringing groups of people together, how you're making them aware of where their data points are, where we want to focus our attention, all of that kind of stuff. So building an action plan starts with, kind of just like, what are our initial strategies going to be? Who are going to be the people that are involved with that? When are we going to do that? So this is the starting point of the strategic plan for shifts moving into the next year.
This is really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one question on the timing or revisit assessment year-long schedule. You mentioned with iReady that you added back.
Yes.
Wasn't the removal of that something that was done recently?
Yes.
Okay.
So we took it out the year before,
Yeah.
because the middle school students and teachers were feeling a bit of test fatigue. And I completely understand that. I'm not always a big advocate for testing more. But what they found was that it provided them such good information mid-year that they really wanted to do it again. And so that's why we're going back to 3 times a year at the middle school level. We already do 3 times a year at the elementary.
And I know we've talked about this before, but please just remind me, they do the iReady 3 times a year, and then they do the CAS at the end of the year.
They do the beginning of the year iReady as a baseline,
Yeah.
then they do the mid-year,
Yeah.
and then they do CAS, and then they do iReady again. So CAS comes right before iReady. So, you know, I mean, we could do it another way. Scott and I've talked about like, how do we do it another way? There's lots of ideas about how to do it another way, but whichever one you do first is probably where they're gonna put more of their energy.
Yeah.
Do we want them to put more energy into CAS for iReady? CAS,
Yeah.
right? So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Remind me, do a lot of other districts use iReady? If a student transfers into our district, do we have data from iReady and we would get CAS, but
Yeah, it's great. It's a great question. So many schools in this county use iReady. Many schools across the state use iReady. It's very popular. Their system doesn't transfer, but we put the iReady data into Infinite Campus, and so we can also extract that when we get students. It just doesn't look like the reports that we have that we can see for our own students until they test with us for the first time.
but if we have a student who came in from another school, in the spring, after they've been with us for a year, would we still be able to compare where they were last spring at a different district and where they are this spring? with
If
us?
their district
If-
put their iReady results into Infinite Campus,
I know what you mean. Got you.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And most of us do.
Yeah.
Most of us do. Thank you for the questions. The last slide is just asking for more questions and a quote. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. So that's what we're always doing in the LCAP.
Great.
Great
Questions or
presentation.
comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good work.
I think it's, thank you. It's always interesting to me, like, that we view that LCAP as our guiding document, like a strategic plan, but the plan is also really designed for like X% of our budget. Like, it's actually a pretty small amount
Yeah.
of our budget that comes into this plan, right? Like, I mean, now I
And
can't
a small
remember.
percentage of our students.
Right, I mean, it's got the curb cut like thing where, right, a lot of our students are gonna benefit from all of the other. From things that are put into place via the LCAP. Although there's something in the actual LCAP itself, it's like contributing versus non-contributing, maybe that's an Allison question, just the way it's kind of designated. Did I say it right? Is it-
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, so contributing would be any students that would qualify for that supplemental funding. And that's where the 1.18 comes into play. Now, all other students were physical and action were all students,
Mhm.
then it's non-contributing because it wouldn't fall under that supplemental fund.
so like we're doing it anyway, because obviously, because it's the right thing to do and it makes sense and it's important to have it as a part of the plan. But
We're gonna use another
Using-
funding
yeah,
source.
okay.
Yeah, supplemental is required to be an LCAP.
Mhm.
So the full amount of supplemental that we receive is required to be an LCAP,
Right.
and then we can go above and beyond with other funding sources to serve those students and needs.
Just in regards to the strategies, how have these changed from year to year? Are these all?
Those are
new?
new.
Yeah, this is the
So-
first time I've seen this
Yeah.
sheet, so.
Yeah, I mean, typically, we don't share them with the board because the board doesn't ask. We typically start like working with them with our site principals and like thinking like, what's our strategic plan gonna be this year? But you asked.
So like, for example, in the high leverage math strategies for the math focus, some of the strategic actions like organized quarterly math teaching strategy workshops. Is that something we haven't done in the past?
This year, we haven't done that in the past. This year with our PEVC coach that we just started with last year, she's scheduled to be with us quarterly to do that. So that is gonna be the first time that she's working with us in that way.
And then that'll be like the whole staff, like the elementary, because all elementary teachers teach math.
All of
And
them.
then the math teachers at New Brighton.
Yeah, I mean, so couple of different questions with that. So one is our PEVC coach works with our math leadership team and any other teachers that want to be involved with the teaching of those high leverage practices as lab teachers. And then the rest of us kind of go around and learn from them. Then what we do, like we did last year, is we put those learnings and those things into the PD that we have planned. So that's kind of how that works. So it's kind of a multi-step. So the sessions are with the math team. The full learning for all teachers is on our PD days. Does that make sense? Because we can't take every single teacher and push them into the classroom. Somebody has to be teaching.
Can you send this electronically?
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to. Okay, yeah, I'll put it in the Friday.
Oh,
That'd be
perfect.
wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you to whomever asked the question, because it's really neat to be able to see.
Yeah.
something.
Well, and it helps us too. It
Sure.
helps us stay focused.
Any questions? No. Did we, with the expanded learning opportunities, ever kind of find out what are the student favorites?
That's a great question. I think it differs by school.
Oh, okay.
I would say at SoCal Elementary, what turned out to be their drama program definitely became their favorite when they did Little Mermaid. And was it Little Mermaid? Peter Pan. Yeah. I was there when they were decorating with sequins, so but they ended up taking every student that was in their EL and reading intervention and convinced them to try out for the play, and they had to read their scripts and they had to learn their scripts. And so it was like this way of like reading and writing, doing a play, and they had like a bunch of them. They all wanted to come. So I think that, we see drama as a big one, but seeing those students specifically find such a happy space, never having been on a stage before for most of them, is really great.
And we're maybe able to take some of that feedback for next year's
Yeah.
ELA.
Yeah, and I know Julie would say, my gosh, it was so much hard work, and she and Diane Bach did it together, but I think she would absolutely do that.
All right.
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Oh,
Saw Little Mermaid, made a Disney a fortune
Mm.
with Little Mermaid and all the rest of his animation programs, and he went to Bob Eisner and said, I need a raise, I'd like a piece of all the movies that I'm creating. Bob Eisner said no, Katzenberg left and made DreamWorks, then he took billions of dollars away from Disney. A little moral to the story, pay the people with the talent.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. All right. well,
All right,
thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much
you.
for that. It sounds like.
you.
We're, yes, all right. Turning the page. 8B, presentation of the proposed 25-26 budget.
Let's make sure everything quick and see. So, okay, let's get right into the MYP projection factors. So I always like to cover this. So the COLA for 25-26 is a 2.3%. And as we talked about that before, that's down. It was roughly originally around 2.9%, then it dropped down to about 2.5%. Now it's 2.3%. The COLAs for 26-27 and 27-28 have went down slightly. There's not a huge hit there, but we'll be seeing 3.02 projected and 3.42 for 27-28. For enrollment projections, I'm still projecting declining enrollment. So for next year, about a reduction of about 28 students to about 1475, hoping that maybe we'll see a few students offset. Oh, sorry. Did you
Just the page
I'm going there.
567.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 567. Yes, I got it. Okay, thank you. So still expecting to see that decline, even with the housing developments going in. So roughly about a 28 student drop from this, 24-25 into 25-26. And then going into 26-27, I projected about a 40 student loss. And then into 27-28, down to 14-20. And with that, my projections for ADA remain about the same, about 94%. We've been doing really well with ADA. thank you to all teachers and staff for everything they do for that. That's amazing because we've been holding steady. So if we hold steady and we bump a little bit higher than that, that would be great. So you'll see assigned funds and SACs, and I usually put that in. I put $100,000 in for sped as well as $100,000 for textbooks. And that kind of is like a little holding area in case we do need those funds. Step and column is always at 1.5%. And in the out years, there's also reductions baked in salaries to kind of offset deficit spending and the need that we have to. There's a couple things down here that I'll talk about, like what's not included. So what's not included in this budget, because we haven't really seen the funding, and I don't like to put funding in there that we haven't seen and hasn't been fully fleshed out, is the new SIBHI, that's what they call it, the Children and Youth Behavioral Health Service Initiative. And what that is where we can then bill for services provided by, say, counselors or like for mental health or anything like that to recoup some funding. And in that case, that would go directly to our counseling department as far as like offsetting their salaries, stuff like that. So that would be great. When we did the estimate and we ran the numbers for that, if all comes to fruition and everything works out, we're estimating roughly about $200,000 that we can get back in billing. So that would be amazing. And like I said, that's not included in the budget. So with that, that would just be an added bonus for the district. Also not in the budget is the governor's new proposed block grant. And I know when it had first been talked about, they were projecting a little bit higher amount that would be going and dedicated to this block grant. I know that it was reduced a little bit in the May revise. And that's why I was kind of skeptical about adding it into the 25-26 budget. It's everything's still pointing to that we will receive it. How much, we don't know. So once we do get the green light on that in June, July, then at first interim, I'll add it in there. So, and that will also help with our deficit spending as well. So I know back when it was first brought to the table, it was looking like the district would receive about $400,000, a little bit more than $400,000. So with the reduction, it may be and around the $300,000 range, which would be amazing for the district. Also, what's not included and the position as well as the funding is the wellness coaches and the grants. So once we get that, that'll go in together and it'll kind of offset each other. So whatever we are paying out for the wellness coaches, it'll be offset by the grant. But I just
Are you writing the grants or are these just coming down from the state?
No, it's state and Carissa.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's working, yes. So a few areas in the budget that has increased. So for Fund 35 that we received, which that special fund where we doing our great field, we had to do additional audits for that. There's about 5 to 6 audits because there's different buckets. And unfortunately, that could not be charged to Fund 35. It had to be charged to the general fund. So joys to that. As well as we'll be seeing bond audits coming too. So just wanted to make sure everyone's aware. So for the bond audit, it'd be roughly, depending on what sections they do, it'd be like $9,000 per audit bond. And it was the same thing for Fund 35 was $1,000 per.
So it was 5 audits, $45,000.
Yeah,
And I'm sorry,
okay.
Fund 21, so the bond audits,
Mm.
do those have to come out, those also have to come out of the general fund?
When I talk to the auditors, unless something changes, but I always ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, as far as I know, and last time I checked, yes. So another area that has increased is a school excess liability fund. I don't know if you may have heard of it. It's called SELF. So this has to do with AB 218, which this is the area where they had lifted the statute of limitations for any type of sexual harassment, molestation, or anything like that that may have happened years ago. The district has been paying for the last few years about $45,000 a year based on all these old claims that have come to fruition, and SELF was our insurance carrier at the time. We're not the only district that's having to pay this. It's across the county that they've been getting these bills. Well, coming into 25-26, they really jumped up.
Mm.
And it's, again, it's not just our district, it's the districts in the whole county. So for 25-26, we're going from about 50,000 to about $77,000 that we have to pay for these outstanding claims.
I'm sorry, can you explain that? So the old claims against the district that are still going on, is that insurance, is that interest on those claims that?
So what it is that AB 218 was that new law that came into effect a few years back, where it lifted the, I'm sorry, statute of limitations. So that way anyone could come forward for any, like if they're beyond 45 years. I mean, if it was like 60 years ago, they can come forward and say, back, when I was in school or back when I was working for the school, X, Y, and Z happened, and now I deserve a claim.
And we've been hit by some of those, like we've actually gotten claims from how,
We get a bill from SELF, which is the school's excess liability fund, since they were the insurance way back, our insurance carrier way back when. So they send us a bill along with other districts in the county who are also insured by SELF. And so they're the ones that are doing the auditing and so forth and calculating it, and then they send a bill and we're required to pay it.
does somebody actively have to make a claim against? I'm sorry, and I don't mean to. take
No,
a
no,
comment.
no, don't be sorry.
So somebody from a half a century ago has made a claim against Soquel Union Elementary School District
Mhm.
for some sort of harassment.
Yes.
And there's their due diligence to see if this is, if it's verified or.
That's a problem. It goes back so far.
Sure.
The records,
So they're just automatically paying out anybody who says 50 years ago they had a claim against whoever just.
How they're
happened to be
claiming
at the time.
now. It's a
yeah,
claim.
they're new claims they're coming
Mhm.
forward, claiming now.
Right, but on something that we can't verify and we're getting hit by this?
Yes, unfortunately, other districts have gone into the weeds and try to do a bunch of research to find information out, and they're just coming to dead ends as well.
That's crazy.
So they don't have to prove their case, we have to disprove their case.
If there's a way, but there's really, they go back so far, there's
Mhm.
no records to be found.
Is what we're paying to the insurer, like just kind of to cover our liability? Or is the amount that we're paying connected to number of claims
Yeah.
against the district?
They list out all the claims,
Uh-huh.
and so and I even cross-reference like last year's bill to this bill. And they'll have the same claim numbers listed, so it's basically, they only had so much funding available, so then the district is picking up the balance of what needs to be paid.
But what we're paying is directly connected to our district. It's not like we pay into some countywide
It's-
pool.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to understand.
Yeah.
And is that our policy going up, the cost of our insurance policy moving up, and will that affect us in years in the future?
They are not our current insurance carrier.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's even more complicated. They used to be our carrier way back when.
and will that affect the rates of our current insurance carrier?
It doesn't affect the rates of our current insurance carrier, although those are listed on there as well too. But that's not connected to our current insurance carrier.
Thank you.
I know, you're welcome. I know I know it's really a bummer when we see those bills, because it's like, oh my gosh, like,
We're saving every penny, and some from 50 years pops up, you know? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the questions. It's great. And so right under that, you'll see joint powers agreement, which is Keenan Insurance, or our JPA. So with that, we're gonna see about nothing to do with the AB 218, but just the insurance itself. It's going up about 15% going into next year. So yeah, so that's a little over $30,000.
Everything, all insurances.
Oh, yeah.
In this state, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And can I ask about the sped money? Don't we usually carry 200,000 for sped, potential sped claims, or?
We didn't really need the 200,000 this year, and I budgeted a little bit more within the budget. So I felt comfortable with 100,000.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, when we get to first interim, since it's forever changing, I can always make adjustments as
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah, yeah.
But great question, thank you. Okay. Clicker.
Oh, I didn't know those came up separate.
Okay. So this is taking a look at the combined revenue, both unrestricted and restricted. And so this shows you LCFF. You'll see on top, you'll see the 17.4, then it goes to 17.6 and 17.8. So we kind of start going up in 17-18, as you'll see the COLA goes up a little bit more each year, which is great. That's going to really help us. Federal, state, and local is roughly estimated to be about the same. And then you'll see the transfers in. The transfers in are for routine restricted maintenance, which comes from Fund 25 and goes into the deferred maintenance, which is in the general fund.
Good question.
Sure.
So you're projecting reduced enrollment, but LCFF goes up.
Yes,
Is that purely because of COLA?
yes, yes,
So the
because
COLA offsets the,
yes,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, we're still not where we want to be, but it's helping a little bit, give us, inches. Yeah,
What's RRM?
routine restricted maintenance.
What's the first?
Routine restricted maintenance,
Routine,
so,
okay.
so for deferred maintenance, yeah.
And why do, I just see, other local donations, rentals. Aren't we gonna potentially be renting out our fields? Why such a decrease?
I don't want to over project. I'd
On
rather,
that?
yeah, I'd rather have be in a kind of safe spot than over project. And then once we start getting a feel of what all of that's gonna look like, then kind of start projecting. Once we get a good number.
I
And
think
the
that's gonna
rental
generate-
fund,
It's a big
So-
jump down.
Raising the rates.
yeah.
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 The revenue goes into, from the rentals,
Mhm.
what fund does it go into?
General
It
fund.
does, it's all general fund, okay.
Yeah, so and that's another thing, once we get further down the road, is deciding to put some money aside for maintenance or
Right,
future replacement of the turf. Because, eventually we would have to replace it, so I think it'd be a good idea,
yeah,
we put so much aside.
Maybe like when Capitol Little League CSLL or something like that rents our fields, we can create a separate thing, so that's just used towards the maintenance of those fields or something like that, maybe save us some money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Oops. Look later, 2000.
Good page.
Am I the right one?
Yeah.
Restricted, okay.
Yeah.
So with this page right here, I split out, the budget for unrestricted, restricted. This is just unrestricted going across the 3 years. So you'll see the budget amount, you'll see the expenses. Then you'll see the increase or decrease. So you'll see we're still in deficit spending into 26-27. But in 27-28, we're kind of coming out of it. So that's if we can kind of keep along where we're going, and keep in mind for 25-26 on the MYP, those items that I talked about that weren't included in the budget, if those do come to fruition, that's going to kind of help combat our deficit spending, because we're not going to add anything new. We're going to use that funding to help offset our deficit spending, which is going to be great.
NYP,
Multi-year projection.
MYP,
Yeah,
yes.
sorry. So here you also see where our reserve, our percentages for reserves. And right above that, you'll see our ending fund balance. So that's kind of mid-page. So in 25-26, it's at 1.5, in 26-27, 1.2. And then we'll kind of start going up because we're kind of leveling out in 27-28 to about 1.4. So we're going to go up a little bit based on the projections and any savings that we can possibly have. And then our reserve amount of what we'd have in reserves is about 6.5, dropping a little under 6%, and then going back up to a little over 6%. You'll see then I have the assigned in the 200, 200, and then 27-28. There's 300,000. I added another 100,000 because each year, if you're going to add more, you need to increase it. So in 27-28, not knowing what we're going to look like as far as needs of textbooks and or the enrollment of SPED students, I thought it might be a good idea to just increase that a little bit in that area. So with the assigned, you'll see the new ending fund balance if those dollar amounts come to fruition, right? If we don't utilize those funds, the ending balance would be that midsection, for instance, in 25-26, the 1.5. However, if we do use the assigned, it'd be the 1.3, and then our reserves amount would drop to the 5.67. And then what we're required is at the very bottom, so that's the 3% requirement, yeah.
What if we say, no, we're not gonna do the reserve, what are they gonna do?
The state could take us over.
Really? I thought they just take the reserve if they're broke.
No, that's what we're required by the state to have 3%.
For us.
I'm pretty sure the state's.
Okay, no, there's, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I thought there was a reserve where the state could come in and take our reserve if. Well, it has to go to the voters first. But at one time, the governor could come in and just take the reserve from the schools when deemed necessary.
oh, okay, I haven't heard of that one.
He can still do a lot of.
Yeah.
He can just write it into the budget.
Yeah.
And nobody gets a vote.
There's not.
I'm curious on here, if, for example, worst case scenario, like, he gets sued or something like that for $500,000, where would that come out of here and how would that affect us? And is this a long-term thing or a short-term thing?
So long-term, short-term for,
I'll say a lawsuit comes against the school. I'm just worried about, I'm just thinking, worst case scenario, we get hit with something or whatever. I mean, we just come from 50 years ago.
yeah,
So, I mean, what fund would that come out of? How does that get paid out? What's the,
any type of lawsuit, unfortunately, would have to come out of general fund.
Right.
However, our insurance does help offset it. So there would be that, so there would be an offset from the insurance, so we wouldn't pay out, like, for instance, if it was $500,000, we wouldn't pay that entire $500,000.
Right.
It would be the agreement we had with
25%?
roughly, or yeah, whatever agreement we had. And then with that, then it would be kind of like, okay, let's see where we can save, let's see, and just kind of going step by step.
Okay, and it's the general fund, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, the expenses from 25-26 to 26-27. What's the driving force in the decrease in those expenses?
So that would be anything that we can save on nutrition or anything else. So for instance, if going into next year, for 26-27, I kind of baked in about $600,000 in savings. That was our target this year. We were a little bit shy of it, but going into next year, I was kind of thinking, okay, if we can kind of stick around that same number, because that seemed like a number that everyone agreed upon. That's a good number to put in there. I did a little bit less in 27-28. You'll see a slight drop there. It was about a little over 300,000. However, again, I would just like to say, if any of the other money does come to fruition, that's gonna help too.
Yeah.
So then at first interim, I'm gonna take another look and see where we're at, and then everything will probably change a little bit. But that's where the 26-27, that's where that.
I'm sorry, when's first interim?
Too soon?
Yeah, coming up.
January.
January.
January for personnel.
Am I not thinking? So November? October, never mind, yeah, sorry.
Thank God.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay, and I'm like, wait a minute.
I don't
That's
know.
okay.
I was thinking of.
Yeah. There are lots. Can I ask a question on the reserve? That anecdotally, that seems, I know it's above the 3%, but it still seems lower than where it's been over the last few years. Is that right? I mean, like, how you
Yeah,
feel about that? Just knowing how much of that would get eaten up in some kind of crisis just to keep
yeah,
people getting paid.
yeah, no, absolutely, that, and that's always a concern.
Yeah.
Well, with all of the one-time money, that really drove up the reserves across the county.
Yeah.
I feel like now where we're at, as far as our reserve amount, it's kind of where we used to be.
Okay,
So we're kind of back to kind of like normalization.
okay.
I mean, I would love to have more reserves, and that's something I always want to work on, and that's something that I always kind of let everyone know, like, is it a need or a want? And everyone's kind of getting used to me saying that. Do we really need it, or is it something that we want, type of thing, even, so everyone's becoming super mindful, so it's just really being careful on what we spend on and making sure, and what we're doing in the classroom, making sure we're stopping tight until we can get those reserves built up a little more. But definitely something like what Robert said, it's always a concern.
Just curious, what scares you?
What scares me.
Yeah, like what's the hiccup? What would happen that you might think that's not good?
I mean, another huge drop in enrollment, beyond, I mean, a little bit beyond what I projected, I mean, it's fine, but if it was like a huge drop, if we lost 150 kids for some odd reason. Or something like you said, something, that comes out of nowhere, like, lost of something we can't control, although it would be offset. Just things like that, yeah,
I appreciate it's a difficult
no,
question.
no, it's.
With the reserve so low and, it makes me think, what should be really getting out for,
Yeah, and that's something that we talk about, the budget like weekly. So we're always going over it and always looking at areas, that we can focus on and so forth. It's something that's always on. So. Yeah, we don't want surprises, so.
Right, right.
Yeah. Am I on the right page? Okay. Okay, so here's a restricted, budgets, 25, 26, going to 26, 27. Now for the restricted side of the house, this is a little bit different. Because for restricted, this is where most of the one-time money sits. So they give it to us ahead of time for the most part, not all, but most of them do. And so it sits in our ending fund balance. So in order to utilize those funding, we have to basically decrease our ending fund balance, and which is in the red. So that's why you'll see the ending fund balance decrease to it starts at 1.2 and goes down to 2.71. We will be expending 7435, which is the learning loss recovery grant, block grant, by the end of 24-25. And then going into 26-27, we'll have to have the arts and music, not Prop 28, but the other arts and music grant fully expended as well. So that's why you see the drop there. And this just kind of gives you an idea of how our unrestricted dollars are spent. So you'll see the biggest darker blue area, that's all salaries and benefits, and that's great because that's how we should be spending it. Contracted services are, it's the step down of blue, it's a little bit lighter blue. Books and supplies, the lighter blue, and you'll see the contribution to SPED. That comes out of our unrestricted side of the house. So, and that goes over to the restricted side of the house. This year, as of right now, we're about at a little over 3.3 million, and that's having to contribute about 88,000 to the County Office of Education because we had an increased number of students in the COE program. Going into next year, and those students we had received the second half of the year, going into next year, since we did have the increase of students and they're still going to be with us, the amount that we have to pay the COE is about $230,000. So with that, I had to bump up our SPED contribution for 25, 26 to about 3.7 million. So that would include any other increased services and the increased service that we have to pay to the COE. So going forward, ADA is always something that I'll list on here. And like I said, everyone's been doing an outstanding job and I appreciate everyone offering the incentives, taking the one-day independent study so serious and everyone wanting to be on board with that. It was great, everyone coming together, front office staff, principals, teachers, and so forth, because that one really took a village, right? Promoting our school's offerings, SAGE, DLI, ELOP. DLI has been doing great. Their classes have been filling up. The SAGE program has been getting recognition, which is amazing. And the ELOP program is another amazing piece that our schools have to offer. And on top of that, the modernization and our fields. I think the fields are going to be great once people see like all the new modern classrooms and the modernized fields and so forth. That's going to be a great outdoor experience for kids. And then continue reducing the deficit spending with the fiscal prioritization team and saving with attrition like we have been doing. So we continue on those paths, I think we will be okay.
Any more questions?
Ted's eyes.
Like a million is that what you wanted to do?
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really good.
Really thorough.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
You're welcome.
Very thoughtfully prepared. I think I say this every time, but I appreciate the way you present the information, because this is not something most of us do on a daily basis, so you're well, thank you for explaining it so clearly.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, thanks for that. Moving on to action items. 9A, consider approval of the 25-26 California School Dashboard Local Indicator Self-Reflection. Oh, California.
Thank you. So this information was actually embedded in the presentation for the LCAP. It's just the written format that you can kind of see how we go about walking through that tool. And it just focuses on specific areas like you know, teacher quality, instructional materials, all of those kinds of things. This does have to be passed by the board in the June meeting. So that is my request, that you consider approval of our local indicator report.
Can you go over the whole?
Well,
Oh, my God.
From Ted, wow.
and even for you.
That's the shock.
Yeah.
Actually, off note, No Child Left Behind. I wonder what happened to the districts that were taken over by the feds, and then when the program ended, what happened there? They just like abandoned the schools, or I mean,
There's a lot that happened with those, and yeah.
Oh,
it
yeah.
wasn't very good. So this, and I think what Ted is referring to is this is under the Every Student Succeeds Act. It used to be called the Nickelby, the NCLB. And that was a very high stakes game. The ESSA, which is what we have now, was what we did the local indicator tool under, really asks us to reflect on the state priorities and how we're attending to those state priorities.
All right, questions or comments from the board?
Thank you for putting this together.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, if there's no questions or comments, this is an action item. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to consider the approval of the 25-26 California School Dashboard Local Indicator Self-Reflection.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. 9B, consider approval of the 25 LCAP federal addendum.
Okay, so you just saw the LCAP. The federal addendum is something that goes with the LCAP, and we have to report. For reporting purposes for a district our size, there's not a lot of information in it, but it's really designed to say, are you taking a look at your titled programs, like your Title I, your Title II, your Title III? And we don't qualify for all the titled programs in our district. We only qualify for a few. So some of the pages you'll see don't have a lot of information on them. More of the titles that we see implemented here would be Title I, and Title I would be students who are qualified by being as low SES, but are served because they are not meeting grade level standards. And then Title II is professional development, but it's just a very, very, very small slice of what we get funded for. So it's not a lengthy report, but it is required to be part of the federal, it is required to be part of LCAP approval process because it calls out those groups specifically.
All right, questions or comments from the board? Nope. All right, do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the 2025 LCAP federal addendum.
A second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. 9C, consider the California School Employee Association CSEA tentative agreement.
Great, so that's me. So on May 22nd, we came to a tentative agreement with CSEA. You'll notice that there is no AB 1200 attached to this tentative agreement, and that is due to there was no salary increases. However, if you go down slightly, I'm not sure if you're on page 618. We did agree on a couple items, and one would be the meal reimbursement for school bus drivers. It was at $10, and we brought that up to our reimbursement we have for travel and conference, which makes sense. So that went from 10 to 15. The clothing allowance, and that would be for our custodial staff, grounds, maintenance. They normally get $100 clothing allowance, so that's going to go up to $200.
Does that include safety clothing like steel-toed boots? Do they have to wear those and safety glasses, or does it include, is that separate from the $200?
No, that would be included in here.
Oh, really?
Steel-toe boots aren't required.
Or they're not?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so it would just be a tire that they can wear to work.
Oh, okay.
Let me see. Okay, so if you look on page 619, where it's article leaves, 11.14, this whole section is new, and it's regarding the reproductive loss leave, which allows up to 5 days for reproductive loss. So that's all new language. And I think there was.
What's reproductive loss? And I just feel like I need to get that. I was like, this.
Miscarriage.
Miscarriage, yeah.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
It's a, you're welcome.
It includes failed adoption and failed surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
like really
Yeah.
kind of honoring like someone's family might have, there are lots of ways to experience the loss to your family dynamics.
Yeah, yeah. And then you'll see on page 619 as well, article 15, there are a few changes when you scroll down. Nothing major, just some changes to dates and a little language and that is about it.
What's the 3 persons appointed by CSEA instead of 2?
So that has to do with when they submit units to go up for professional growth, because that would increase their pay. It's a panel, so it's the district would have 2 and CSA would have 3. And what that would do is make sure that there isn't a tie. So there's always going to be an extra person. Because before it was 2 and 2, and then they were concerned about a tie, so that's why they said, can we do 3?
How would that affect us financially if
It won't, it'll be fine, because normally professional development, it doesn't come down to the point where we really need a panel. They're usually pretty straightforward and
they accomplish and this course or this course and
yeah, we really haven't seen an issue, so. You're welcome.
Not have any questions.
All right, if there's no more questions, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve CSEA's tentative agreement.
Great, a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations, CSEA, the tentative agreement passes. 9D,
Discussion of the.
consider approval of the increase for district facility use rental fees.
So we haven't brought these to the board since 2012.
Ah,
So we thought it would be a good time to bring these to the board since
Yeah, definitely.
we're modernizing and upgrading our fields. So if you look on page 623, you'll see the green column, that's our new proposed rate. You'll see right next to that, that's our current rate.
wow.
And then
Cheap.
and then Pam was ever so nice to go and investigate the other sites. So she did all this legwork, got everything together and put this document together for us. But you can just see the comparisons. We were overdue.
Way overdue.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when you take in consideration, does that include maintenance labor at overtime plus 3% for benefits?
So this is just the rental of the
Itself.
facility. Yes. So
Okay,
when we, if we charge for custodial staff or
Uh-huh.
anything like that, that'll be an additional cost. I see what you're saying now.
Oh, yeah,
Now
okay,
that I'm
so
talking,
this is just being on the field.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still cheap.
Can I ask,
Yeah.
is there a different, I'm just in my mind imagining that the New Brighton field, it's bigger. Would that have a different rate than perhaps some of the other fields, like that have the smaller soccer field? Like
that's,
why? Yeah,
yeah, that's something that we didn't break out, and that may be something that we look at in future board meetings. We could always bring it back, and we can always add if that's
Yeah.
something. I know that Santa Cruz Gardens is gonna also have the same size field as New Brighton. That's a big field too, so yeah, that would be,
So you get more adult play,
yeah.
adult leagues coming in.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's a great question.
Yeah.
So we can always
Yeah,
bring it
that's
back
great,
and
yeah.
update them again.
When was the Live Oak field remodel?
yeah.
Gosh, maybe.
Because they're at $125 an hour.
That's probably shoreline.
I mean, and that's the fair rental value, so I'm not sure how that equates, but just the reduced fees for nonprofit, we're at 35, they're at 50,
Mhm.
and then other nonprofit, we're 60, we're at 75. So I'm curious, I feel like I'm in the NFL and I'm paying my new quarterback with his new contract less than what somebody else just negotiated their contract.
Yeah, gosh, I want to say that may have been 5-6 years ago when they put Shoreline in.
We have the newest, latest and greatest.
Yeah.
Or less money than that.
Across the board on a lot of them.
Yeah, just food for thought. We might have an opportunity to, stay market competitive.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I'm thinking, so part of this is if we go up too high too fast, it might become sticker shock. Because for instance, we're going from, if we just look at the field, 10 to 35, 20 to 60, and then 30 to 90. So kind of to ease on into it, once the fields are done, because as of right now, we won't have any rentals until maybe January once that field is done. So then before that, we can always revisit. If that sounds good.
I think that's a great idea
Yeah.
to revisit this before the field's actually done, consider the different sites.
Yeah.
Consider being more, that we're the newest thing
Yeah.
and being, more on the
Okay.
higher end. Of
Okay.
the-
If we build it, they will come.
Yeah, but it's also great, to Allison's point, I think that's great that. Then when there's a comparison to
Yes.
from, oh, but your rate was this and now it's going up to this, at least it'll be at 90. And
Yeah.
maybe it's gonna go up to 120 and whatever. but
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be like, whoa, it was 30 and now it's 120.
So when do these fees take effect once we prove it?
Yes, 7-1.
7/1, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So you figure if it is filled,
Or give them a notice or.
yeah. And if it, and that's what Pam has been doing. Anytime anyone's been calling and wanting to rent something, she's been kind of just taking the information, holding on to it and letting them know that the field, the fees are gonna be going up effective 7/1 and they're not board approved yet, so. So.
Cool.
Do we make a note now to add it to the board agenda so we don't forget?
I can do that.
Okay,
You can.
and that kind of makes sense because the other fields, they're not new turf yet, so we'll be in line. So I think that's a great idea.
And to Amanda's point, I like that we're mid or updating it now kind of to a newer price and then we can look at it again. 'Cause
Yeah.
Good thinking.
Thank you all.
Go team. All right, that is a action item. May I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the increase for district facilities users development plan with a tip and a great thank you to Pam Crum for her work on that.
Agreed.
Second that.
I will let her know.
Still cheap.
All in favor? Aye.
Thanks.
Any opposed? All right, thanks everyone for a wonderful meeting. Correspondence, feel free to tell us, future agenda items, you can always email. Would someone like to make a motion of adjournment?
I'll make the motion. My phone just went to sleep. That's fine.
A second? I'll second. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you, thank you. Thanks.
Well, it's gotten better.